My name is Daniel Cortez, 36 years old, a railway maintenance technician in a small town in the Midwest, between cornfields and tracks that cut through the map in lines that look like scars. I grew up with the sound of air brakes and the long whistle that wakes both the dog and the baby at the same time. I know that switching yard like someone knows the smell of their own home. Burnt oil, wet wood, damp iron. I've always explained noises as just noises, until the night the whistle sounded without a train, and the whole platform moved like a body. The old station is on a seldom used branch line with a brick shed, a broken clock stuck at 2:17 since before I was born, and a platform of long planks that creak in an almost musical way. The plan was simple: check the platform lights and inspect the switch house because someone had complained of a strange echo in the drainage tunnel beneath the tracks. I arrived at 10:40 p.m. with a colleague, McCoy, who treats superstition with a half smile. The wind was cutting through, that kind of cold that gets under your coat and lives in your bones. I cut the power to the main lights to test a circuit. The emergency lights were dim amber, casting long shadows from the benches. The distant train whistle, that's normal. The echo in the tunnel, also normal when the temperature drops. What wasn't normal was the platform, the planks, letting out a sigh that wasn't wood relaxing. It was breathing. A warm air rose from the crack between the planks, with the smell of stagnant water and warm leather, a sourness that my body recognized before my mind. McCoy was at the far end of the platform, checking a light post. I whispered his name, and it cut through the thin smoke the cold had drawn from my mouth. He looked up, raised his chin. "What?" The whistle sounded again, long but from the wrong side. It wasn't from the main line, it seemed to come from beneath the platform, from the service tunnel. Right then, the emergency lights flickered, and the ground beneath my feet moved. It didn't shake. It moved, like something large passing beneath, pushing the air through the wood. I wanted to say it was roadkill in the drain, some animal stuck, but the line I felt under my soul started at the switch house, crossed the platform, turned at the end like a lazy S, and stopped near the old loading crane. It wasn't something banging, it was something sliding. I placed my hand on the floor. It was warm in a stripe, cold beside it. The drainage tunnel, which runs parallel to the tracks, returned a damp, muffled huff, the sound of someone breathing through an iron pipe. I descended the service basement stairs with my flashlight low. Anyone who knows confined spaces knows. Bright light blinds more than it helps. The corridor under the platform is narrow, concrete, with grates letting the air rise. On the third step, I saw it, a shiny strip of fresh mud running as if someone had dragged an oily cylinder through there. The flashlight reflected off something stuck in the grate. Fine, translucent fragments with pocked patterns, scale change. I'd seen that in southern rivers, not under a station. I ascended slowly. McCoy was making jokes to himself, and I heard the joke die halfway when the platform next to him arched a finger and settled. He cursed softly, like someone reading their own fear. "Is it an animal?" I wanted to say big raccoon, but my body refused the lie. "There's a corridor under the planks," I replied. "Something is using it as a bridge." He laughed without laughing. "Flesh train?" The broken clock read 2:17 when the whistle sounded a third time, and there was no locomotive light on the horizon. At the far east of the platform, something scratched beneath. The planks creaked in sequence, and a draft of air moved with insulting precision. The line stopped at the access stairs and rose an inch, not the thing, the air. And that's when I saw it, between one plank and the next, for a second that gave me another age. A golden slit eye, glowing in the shadow and disappearing. The forked tongue flicked out and sliced the air. The wood returned its heat to the palm of my hand. The head didn't fully appear. It didn't need to. "Get out of the beam," I told McCoy without thinking. "Turn off the damn flashlight." He obeyed instinctively. We were in half light, breathing small. The line beneath us began to move again, crossing the platform like a river beneath ice, and in the end, it descended again to the tunnel through a grate I swore a man wouldn't pass through. It wasn't a man. It was something else, patient, certain of its path. When the warm air disappeared, the cold returned violently, as if the world had opened a window. The emergency light stopped flickering. The whistle didn't sound again. We sat on the bench long enough for our bodies to remember how to warm themselves. McCoy spoke first. "I won't tell if you won't tell." I answered the wrong way for a secret. "We'll tell. The right way." In the night's report I wrote, "Anomalous vibration on platform. Possible movement of fauna in drainage tunnel. Check grates and covers." Writing "giant snake under the station" wouldn't help. They would laugh. I would have laughed too, yesterday. Today, not. The next night I returned with tools and rags. Once you learn, you learn. I sealed the holes leading into the waiting room, where people step and smell, with a veil. Cleaned the shadowy corridor that led from the tunnel to the gravel bank behind the station, and created a mouth where the brush begins. No light, no shout, no siege. I wrote on my hand like a mantra, and I waited for the whistle to sound without a train. I returned the next night with the cold lower and my head humbler. I didn't bring bait. I didn't bring a camera. I brought tape to tie windows that bang, cloths to veil the grates that lead to the waiting room, and a shovel to clean the gravel mouth behind the shed where the brush accepts those coming from below. If the station was a body, I was just going to unblock an artery. At 11:58 p.m. the yard breathed with that silence only a track place knows, quietude of iron waiting for orders. Midnight, the emergency lights briefly dimmed, like a blink. At 12:03 a.m. the whistle sounded. Not on the right track, from inside, from the tunnel, long muffled scratching memory. The wood of the platform responded with a crack that wasn't collapse, it was a warning. And then the ground beneath my boots rippled a finger, settling afterward, like a muscle contracting. 3 teenagers picked the worst time to jump the fence. They arrived laughing with a 1200 lumen flashlight, filming their ghost train adventure. It was only when the beam hit the planks that the world decided to defend itself. The warm air rose forcefully through the ventilation grates, pushing dust and fine rust upward, a breath from below that blinded the boys by reflex. The flashlights dropped, they coughed and cursed. "Get off the platform," I said calmly and quietly, like talking to a scared horse. "It's maintenance." The magic word that sends them away without humiliation. They left, spitting bravery with a taste of dust. At 12:09 a.m. the line traced the planks again. First close to track 2, then crossing the gap of the slats, then turning in an S at the height of the crane. I kneeled and lowered the flashlight to not hurt the dark. That's when I saw it, for the first time, without glass, without assumption, the arc of a body. Not a head. A thick back, wet scales reflecting the amber of the lights, a pattern of wide pocks, living skin. It brushed beneath the plank, which groaned a short sigh. I withdrew my hand by instinct, not wanting to be the wrong part of the scene. The arc passed and disappeared into the grate leading to the drainage tunnel, the same one I had unblocked earlier. "If we close for 2 nights, we can teach the way out from outside the hall," I said to McCoy, who had turned to stone 15 meters away. His cap crooked, his faith crooked. He looked at me as if I were proposing to pray. "Close how?" "Lock and cone. Maintenance sign. The truth of paper with another truth beneath it." He laughed without humor. "I've seen you patch a motor with rope. Now you want to patch the night with cloth." "I do," I answered, and I did. We planted cones, sealed the main access, opened the lateral gravel gate. I veiled the grates leading directly to the hall with thick cloth, leaving a dark window aligned with the gravel mouth. In the tunnel, I swept the mud line to point an arrow outward. No smell, no food, just a path. At 12:41 a.m., the ghost whistle sounded shorter, like a microphone test. The warm air rose in 3 spots on the floor, translating a map. The platform rippled as if breathing. The line traced again, and this time, at the height of the hall stairs, it hesitated. The cloth-veiled grate refused the wrong path. I stopped breathing. The line recalculated, turned the S more sharply, and found the window I had opened to the gravel. The back touched the wood beneath once more, asking permission. The tunnel exhaled a damp huff, satisfied to find a river. On the curve's return, I had the certainty I hadn't asked for. The head appeared for a short second between 2 worn slats, a golden eye, a black slit, the tongue slicing the cold air in a comma of flesh. No drama, just confirmation. I lowered my head by the reflex of someone who understands hierarchy too late. The tongue recoiled, the eye disappeared, and the platform returned the air that had taken us. McCoy broke the silence with the only prayer he knows. Jesus. Then, more practically, if someone shows up now and falls into that hole, the bill's on us. I pointed to the cones and the reflective tape. No one gets in. 2 nights. After that, the station unlearns the wrong path. The problem with tunnels is that when one exit works, another tries to compete. At 12:58 a.m., a light tick-tick ran through the basement, the sound of a small body lightly tapping the wood under the service stairs. A cub. It was heading toward the hall, attracted by the warmth of the lobby and the human smells stored in the wood. The cloth on the grates did what it was supposed to. It said no, but the little one insisted, scribbling through the basement in a hurry, not knowing the map, just the smell. We turned everything off until the emergency lights reduced to a minimum. I knelt at the mouth of the side tunnel and blew 2 short, low puffs, pushing a thread of cold air toward the gravel window. It could be superstition, it could be physics. The tick turned into shh and reoriented. In 3 heartbeats, the sound disappeared outside, the sand cracking under a smaller weight. Relief in my bones. The next day, management wanted an explanation. I went straight to the point. Fauna movement in the drainage tunnel. I sealed off the internal access and directed the exit to the gravel. It's better to keep the platform closed at night for another cycle. The manager, Doyle, a spreadsheet man, looked at my face before looking at my report. Is there a risk? Yes, if we open the wrong mouth. If we guide it right, it's just a crossing bridge. He scratched his mustache, assessed the insurance, sighed. 1 more night. If it causes a problem, I'll say it was maintenance. If it doesn't, I'll say it was maintenance. The correct truth under different names. At 11:40 p.m., 2 curious people in a pickup arrived, high beams in the face of the platform. The beam cutting through the amber of the lights like an impolite knife. I descended the ramp calmly. Closed area. We just want to hear the ghost whistle, one laughed. The only ghost here is the fine, I replied, and luckily the cheap humor worked. They left, kicking up dust that settled on the reflective tape like dust decides. Midnight. Short whistle. 12:07 a.m. Long. The platform sighed. The warm air rose. The line traced the route again, now without hesitation at the hall. The gravel window first received the smell, then the weight. Through the slats, I saw the arc of the back twice, polished with moisture. No glamour, no terror, just life crossing at the quietest hour of the town. When the mass passed, the cold air returned, and the wood relaxed. I stood with the impression that the station had temporarily promoted me to furniture, the part that moves for the whole to work. McCoy lit the cigarette that never finishes and offered me the silence that matters. Are you going to write this down? I will, no map. They'll ask for proof. I'll give them the clock. The early morning came with the almost that becomes a headline if we make a mistake. At 12:32 a.m., a local patrol parked on the opposite side, 2 curious officers with very white flashlights. I repeated the maintenance chant. One of them wanted to know about the whistle. Condensation in the tunnel, pressure variation. And the smell? Stagnant water. I didn't lie, I just didn't give them the monster. They accepted the technical jargon, which is the prayer of the secular, and returned to the car. The exact moment they closed the doors, the whistle sounded beneath the platform, muffled. The officer turned his neck but didn't go down. The universe kept its dignity. And then came the final test. 1:11 a.m. Movement at the western end made the platform ripple more than on other days. A long, heavy S and then nothing. The line stopped. The warm air stayed trapped beneath the planks. The grates whistled a f of pressure, and I understood. Something, a fallen grate, an old rubble, had blocked the passage at the angle before the gravel window. If I didn't help, the mass could revert to the hall. I opened the basement trapdoor, entered the narrow corridor and found the problem. An old plank, displaced, had slid out of place and wedged across, narrowing the duct. I didn't touch the body, nor did I see it. I only pressed the shovel to the wood, 2 gentle taps to settle it again on the iron fork, opening 2 more fingers of corridor. The warm air passed by me like a large animal ignoring a small dog. It wasn't heroism, it was carpentry. I went back up and just listened to the station exhale, the long huff that I will hear when I'm old and no longer on duty. In the report I wrote, "Obstruction in drainage duct cleared." In me I wrote, "We are not the owner, we are the caretaker." The station agreed with a crack that said "thank you" in the language of the old planks. We reopened the platform on a clear, cold night, a sky washed with stars, and a wind that came straight through the corridor of the tracks. Cones removed, tape collected, maintenance signs stored. What remained wasn't visible. Grates in the hall still veiled with dark cloth inside, the clean window at the edge of the gravel, the duct free of the piece of plank that had crossed it. The rest was people, a combination of people. 3 words on the team board: no high beams. At 11:57 p.m., the station felt like a church between services. An elderly couple sat on the wooden bench to listen to the yard, as they said. 2 teenagers arrived with their cell phone screens reflecting in their hands and put them away without anyone telling them to. Rumor spread faster than the whistle. McCoy leaned beside me with a cup of coffee that tasted like a night shift and spoke the way he now does, quietly. Midnight, brief dim in the emergency lights. 12:03 a.m., a single, short, muffled whistle, a sign of presence, not alarm. The plank floor let out that sigh that only we, the ones on shift, have learned to translate. I'm breathing. The warm air rose through 2 aligned grates, streaking the amber of the lights in an almost invisible thread. The corridor below worked like a street in the early morning of a small town. The platform rippled a finger and settled. Everything in the right rhythm. No one turned on a flashlight. No one stepped where they shouldn't. The elderly couple lowered their eyes, and the boys held their curiosity by the collar. It was beautiful in a way that doesn't make for a video, seeing a small-town platform accept the crossing of an ancient body without trying to turn it into an attraction. I saw through the gap between 2 worn planks the polished arc of the back pass, twice, 3 times, like someone who had already stamped that corridor on the world's map, and from the gravel window came the sound of sand whispering under weight, and then nothing. A good silence. A man with a reflective vest from the main line came from the other side with the wide step of someone who solves problems with tools. He stopped when he saw the scene without a scene. "Is that the ghost whistle?" he asked, half laughing at himself. "It's the air learning its path," I answered. He stared at the duct for a second longer than haste allows and nodded. He put the radio in his pocket without speaking on the channel. The world gained an ally. The next morning it repeated, and the next. The clock became more important than the map, and I started writing on a laminated piece of paper that I left taped under bench 3, the manual of the breathing platform. If the emergency lights dim and the floor ripples a finger, lower the light, put away the flashlight, and don't stomp on the floor. Grates in the hall, stay veiled, do not remove. The window to the gravel stays clean, do not block. If curious people show up, say maintenance and ask them to stay out of the beams. Do not film. See with your eye. If something gets stuck, don't touch the body. Remove the debris from the duct. The rest will pass. On the team board, I added a line that became an inside joke and a sign of seriousness. Clock, not map. Whoever needed to understand, understood. Doyle, the manager, read it, scratched his mustache and said, "It works, so it's procedure." We sealed the agreement with bad coffee and a decent silence. There was a test night, there's always one. A local influencer showed up with a tripod, microphone, and the certainty that the town owed him a spectacle. The whistle without a train today on the channel. McCoy went before I did. He didn't shout, didn't argue. He simply pointed to the temporary maintenance area sign and said, with his back to the camera, "If you respect the clock, the platform respects you." Did it sound ridiculous as a phrase? It would have in the video. Live, it worked. The guy dismantled his set with enough dignity not to hate us afterward. Sometimes the law is calmness. I learned to measure my life by that muffled whistle. On night shifts, 12:03 a.m. became a promise. When it didn't sound, it was because the cold was too sharp or because the rain had filled the duct bed too much and delayed the crossing. And that's fine. Respect is also accepting misalignment. When it did sound, we'd erase a little bit of the world and give way to the corridor. It seemed like little. It was everything. On the last night before I was transferred to another section, I took my sister to listen from a distance. She stayed in the car, windows closed, interior light off, as I asked. At 12:03 a.m., the whistle came. I tapped 2 fingers on the handrail of the access, my own code without magic, and the platform responded with that good sigh. My sister didn't see anything. She heard, and that was better. On the way home, she said, "Funny, you seemed smaller at the wheel tonight." "It's how it goes," I answered. She didn't ask for an explanation. The day I handed in my yard badge, I ran my hand over the wood of bench 3, where the laminated manual had always been hidden. I left a note with a pen behind it. On the side, no one reads. Caretaker, not owner. And I pressed my ear for a second against the planks, like a child putting a shell to their ear to listen to the sea. The platform breathed a thread of cold air, just that, and I understood the message. Go. If anyone ever asks me, where is the ghost whistle station, I'll give them the answer that doesn't fuel a hunt but nurtures care. Between 11:57 p.m. and 12:11 a.m., when the lights flicker softly and the floor warms in stripes, turn off what you can, give way to the gravel and keep your hurry in your pocket. Those who come with hunger for a map will leave frustrated. Those who come with respect will hear a world passing. I saw a wooden platform turn into a living bridge for a few minutes each night. I saw people put their phones away to be able to see. I saw a small town that doesn't appear on the news make a deal with what crosses beneath. And I learned, too late, that there are things that don't need spotlights, just maintenance and silence.